The night everything broke didn't begin with shouting, with accusations, or with the dramatic kind of confrontation you see in movies where someone throws a phone across the room and demands answers. It began quietly, almost harmlessly, with a small vibration against the wooden nightstand and a soft glow cutting through the darkness of our bedroom, and if I had just turned my head the other way, if I had just respected the boundary between curiosity and trust, maybe my entire life would have taken a different path. Daniel was in the shower, steam curling under the bathroom door, humming that same terrible off-key song he always hummed when he felt relaxed and safe, and I remember thinking in that moment how ordinary everything felt, how stable, how peaceful, until his phone screen lit up beside me. "I miss you already, heart." 4 words, 1 heart emoji, and in a matter of seconds, my chest tightened as if someone had reached inside and squeezed my heart with cold fingers. I stared at the notification longer than I should have, my mind racing ahead of logic, creating stories faster than facts could keep up, because the word, already, echoed the loudest in my head. Already meant recent, already meant intimacy, already meant someone had just left his presence and was missing him, and suddenly 3 years of love felt like they were balancing on a thin thread. I didn't check the contact name properly. I didn't unlock the phone. I didn't walk to the bathroom and knock on the door. Instead, I sat there, frozen, letting imagination replace reality, letting fear take control before truth even had a chance to speak. When Daniel stepped out, towel around his neck and water droplets still clinging to his skin, he smiled at me the way he always did, unaware that I had already started doubting him in my heart. "You okay?" he asked gently. "Yeah," I replied. That was the first lie. And lies, I would soon learn, don't just stay small, they grow roots. The next morning he kissed my forehead before leaving for work and whispered, "Text me when you wake up properly," and I forced a smile, but inside me something had shifted, because when trust cracks, even slightly, every normal action starts looking suspicious. When he flipped his phone face down on the table during breakfast, I felt a wave of anxiety. When he replied to a message and smiled faintly, I wondered if it was her. When he said he might be home late because of work deadlines, I imagined him somewhere else entirely. And the scariest part wasn't what he was doing. It was what my mind was doing. I had been cheated on before. Years ago, I loved someone who lied so convincingly that I questioned my own sanity, someone who made me feel paranoid until the truth came out and shattered everything, and although I told myself I had healed from that betrayal, the scar was still there, waiting for something to reopen it. That notification reopened it. I met my best friend Sophia 2 days later and told her what I saw, and instead of calming me down, she looked concerned and said, "That doesn't sound innocent," and even though she probably meant well, her reaction confirmed the fear that was already growing inside me. "Has he been distant lately?" she asked. "Sometimes," I admitted. "Working late?" "Yes." "On his phone more than usual?" "Maybe." Each answer added weight to my suspicion, and by the time I left the cafe, I wasn't unsure anymore, I was convinced. I began checking his social media more than I ever had before. I noticed new followers. I paid attention to girls who liked his posts frequently. I compared myself to them in ways that made me feel small. I overanalyzed his tone in text messages. I started reading between lines that didn't exist. He would say, "Busy day, sorry for the late reply," and I would hear, "I was with someone else." He would say, "I love you," and I would wonder if he was saying it out of guilt. I didn't realize that I had stopped living in reality and started living in fear. One Friday night, Sophia convinced me to attend a birthday party, insisting I needed distraction before I lost myself in overthinking, and although I didn't feel like celebrating anything, I went. That's where I met Adrian. He was confident, charming in a quiet way, the kind of person who listens intently and makes you feel seen within minutes, and when he noticed I wasn't fully present, he asked what was wrong. I don't know why I opened up to him. Maybe because he was a stranger. Maybe because strangers don't hold your history against you. I told him about the message. About my suspicions. About my past. He listened carefully, nodding, then said something that changed everything. "If he's cheating, you don't owe him loyalty." Those words felt empowering. They felt logical. They felt like protection instead of revenge. For the first time since seeing that message, I didn't feel powerless. I felt justified. That night Daniel texted me, "Miss you. Don't stay out too late." Instead of warmth, I felt anger. Because in my mind, he was sending similar messages to someone else. So when Adrian's hand brushed mine and he didn't pull away, I didn't either. I told myself I wasn't betraying anyone. I told myself I was simply evening the score. I told myself I was protecting my dignity before it was taken from me. But deep down, I knew I was crossing a line. And when I woke up the next morning with regret sitting heavy on my chest, I realized revenge doesn't feel powerful, it feels empty. Daniel called me that morning. "Good morning, beautiful." His voice was soft and sincere. "I missed you last night." The irony made my stomach twist. Because while he missed me honestly, I had betrayed him based on imagination. I should have confessed right then. But I didn't. I waited. I waited for proof that would justify what I had done. I waited for something that would make me feel less guilty. But nothing came. He remained kind, attentive, loving, which somehow made everything worse. A week later, he sat me down in the living room, his expression serious but calm. "I feel like something's wrong," he said. "You've been distant." My heart pounded. "I saw a message on your phone," I admitted. "What message?" he asked, confused. "The one that said, 'I miss you already, heart.'" He stared at me for a moment, then reached for his phone. When he turned the screen toward me, time seemed to slow down. The contact name above the message read, "Lily Hart, sis." His sister. He explained that she had visited that weekend and texted him after leaving because she always got emotional when they said goodbye. I scrolled up. Family jokes, photos, plans for their mother's birthday. Completely innocent, completely normal. My throat tightened as the weight of my mistake crashed over me. "You thought I was cheating?" he asked quietly. I nodded, tears filling my eyes. "You could have just asked," he said softly. 3 simple words, just ask. But I hadn't, because fear had convinced me that silence was safer than vulnerability. "I need to tell you something," I whispered. And then I confessed. Everything, every detail, every selfish justification, every mistake. He didn't shout, he didn't insult me, he just went quiet, and that silence felt like standing in the middle of a storm. "So you cheated," he said finally. "Because you thought I did." "Yes," I cried. "I was wrong." He looked at me in a way I had never seen before, not angry, not hateful, just deeply hurt. "I've never given you a reason not to trust me," he said. "You didn't," I admitted. This was my insecurity. He stood up and walked toward the window, staring outside for a long time. "I loved you enough to be honest," he said quietly. "Why didn't you love me enough to talk to me?" And I had no answer. Because there wasn't one. He asked for space, and for the first time, I truly understood the consequences of my actions. Days without him felt heavier than guilt. I started therapy because I realized this wasn't just about him, it was about me, about the unresolved pain I carried from my past, about the fear that controlled my reactions. Weeks later, we met again. He admitted he didn't know if he could forget what happened. And I told him I didn't expect immediate forgiveness. But I was willing to rebuild. Brick by brick, we started counseling together. We talked about communication, about trauma, about assumptions, about how silence can create monsters that don't exist. Trust didn't return overnight. Some days he looked at me and I could see doubt in his eyes, and I had to accept that rebuilding trust requires patience and consistency. But slowly, things began to shift. We started talking more openly than we ever had before. When something bothered us, we addressed it immediately. When fear appeared, we discussed it instead of letting it grow. One evening, months later, he looked at me and said, "We almost lost everything because we were afraid to talk." And he was right. One question could have saved us. One conversation could have prevented heartbreak. I cheated because I thought he did. But the truth is deeper than that. I cheated because I let fear lead me. Because I valued protecting my pride over protecting our relationship. Because I assumed instead of communicating. And if there's one lesson I carry now, it's this. Assumptions destroy faster than betrayal. Silence builds walls where honesty could build bridges. If you ever find yourself doubting someone you love, don't create a story in your head. Don't let old wounds dictate new love. Ask, listen, communicate. Because sometimes the person you're preparing to punish is completely innocent. And sometimes the real enemy isn't infidelity. It's fear.